Here's a tip on these printers. Don't buy them. They are piles of crap and they have so many problems. Let me show you a few problems that these things have over time, and actually most of these are operator occurred, or operator errors, so let me show you. The first problem is in here. The first problem is you bought the machine. Second, this camera is better. This is an OEM or a non-OEM toner cartridge. It's aftermarket. OEM would have HP on it. It would have like a two-digit number or a 3-digit with either an A or an X. This has neither. X means high yield, which means more toner is packed into the toner cartridge. A means standard, which I don't know why they couldn't use S, but half of the toner cartridge is full on a standard. A high yield means the toner cartridge is meant for high production, which is filled all the way. Now on remanufactured toner cartridges, if you look on here somewhere, you can find an HP number or an HP logo somewhere, but I don't see one on this one. But 2 or 3 years ago, see, you can tell one of the problems right now. The little flap isn't closing at the right, or isn't closing right. That means this is starting to give up. So this is starting to become a bad toner cartridge. You never want to expose the drum. So I always take paper and cover the drum up when I'm working on these things. I don't care about these, but I still do it just to show them I care. All that causes toner to get all over the place. You can even see toner on the main drive gear right there. That gear right there. And just toner all over the place. Now this is a transfer roller. You do not touch it with your fingers. This is supposed to remove dust from the paper as it's exiting here, so it doesn't get all over the power supply. Touching that with your fingers wears the coat off, so don't touch it with your fingers at all. And I don't think I showed you this part yet, but right here, that's the circuit board telling the machine, you can actually see it better, right there. That tells the machine whether this has an OEM cartridge or not. Toner remanufacturers have to put their own board saying this is non-OEM. The law requires that if you're going to say it's a remanufactured, the printer must recognize it as a remanufactured cartridge, so you don't fool the printer. I always, if I want to, I can take a board off of an old cartridge that I have and buy one of these and throw the OEM board on it until it's OEM. But service technicians aren't allowed to do that to customers, but I do to my own. Sometimes. I never buy remanufactured anymore. Now, another problem is when you're looking at these, if you open your cover and your toner cartridge doesn't want to come out, there are a couple of things that could be wrong. First off, your toner cartridge is stuck in there. Number 2, there should be a white lever coming up here and grabbing onto this. Well, there it is. I took it out on purpose. Now I think I'm able to get back up. There you can. See what that does? That moves that crap. It pulls it disengages the drive down here, which releases the toner cartridge. Yanking on that will ruin the toner drive right here. You do not want to wreck the toner drive. It's a pain in the ass to fix. Let me zoom in a bit. It's blurry, but you'll be able to see it in action. Okay, you saw that in action. Let me hook it back up real quick. If it ever comes undone, it's easy just to snap in. Right there. Make sure your paper's out of the way too. Those are important documents anyway. Alright. And here's another problem. I'll show that to you in a minute. Okay, here's the other problem I promised to show you in a minute. I had to look at something. Notice how low the paper's sitting? It's supposed to come up... Where'd it go? I gave the paper out of it first. The paper, as the level's getting lower... my lens cap's moving. It's supposed to come up like this to prevent the paper or the printer from jamming. Well, there's no spring. So this one's supposed to have a spring in it, because that gauge down there moves, tells you you're out of paper or not. That says you're out of paper. That says you got a lot of paper in it. Well, better view. You got a full load of paper in your printer and you're ready to go. And that's another problem too. When these are stuck, customers try to adjust this, and they always end up breaking this little tab that's on there. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to super glue these things back on. They always break. I have another tray though. I'll charge you a few bucks for it. No big deal. It'll get the job done. Now I'll show you the back side and show you problems with the back. There's a lot of problems back there. Only we service techs can fix. Okay, we're at the back side now. The problem occurs right here. I don't know if you can see it, but in this section right here, the frame's bending. And there's a gear right behind this. Yeah, there's a gear right there. I don't know if you can barely see it, but we'll get a light in there. See that gear right there? Well, that gear needs to make contact with the gear on this side. There's two sides. I'm just going to make an example. There's a gear here, and there's a gear, well, behind here. There's a gear here. Actually, no, there's a gear behind it and the gear here. Well, it's attached to this plate. And if the plate moves away, the gear's not going to make any contact. Because it's a swing gear. It's supposed to swing down and kick it. Oh, there's a swing clutch behind here that is supposed to engage it. If it doesn't engage right, this thing's going to start whining and howling. So what we normally do is try to push these things back into the printer to try to make the swing gear engage. Now if that doesn't work, then we just tell the customer that you need a new printer. This is already bent. This is 300,000. This is actually double past its life expectancy. These are supposed to only run 600,000 pages and then die, or 300,000 pages and give up. Well, we tell them to make them to give it up because it's not going to be worth fixing it any longer. This one has 6,000 pages, 600,000 pages on it. It's almost time for it to give up, but we still repair them. They pay us to come out and clean them and maintain them. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to get this cover off right here, and then I'll take the fuser out and show you some problems with the fuser. There's a couple problems on there that don't occur often on these machines for some reason. Okay, I had to do that without the camera off, but now the fuser comes out on its own. Those two blue tabs get the fuser out. This is a brand new fuser, so it's not going to be a good example, but actually will be. This is a clutch gear right here. This inside of here, there are some engagement devices where when the printer starts spinning this at a high rate in here, everything in here engages, so this starts to spin. And this is actually the tensioner. I'm sorry. Another printer I work on, this has a clutch. This is a tensioner, so this puts tension on this gear so it doesn't spin freewheeling. This is the actual gear that needs to make contact to the actual swing gear right in there. So if the frame starts to separate, it keeps separating until it starts to ride on on that plate, which is right. See that plate on the right side of the gear? That's what this gear is going to start to ride on, and it doesn't make contact too well. The first thing it'll do, it's stuck on my cord, it'll wear out the sides of the gear first. That's the last time I worked on one of these, this whole side of the gear, oh, I'm sorry, the inside of the gear here was worn, had a line through it because the plate was rubbing again into the gear and then causing all the teeth to break. Last one I worked on had 4 teeth missing. These things get pretty brutal. Certain people will tell you certain things about these machines, but these things are pieces of crap. I'll tell you that much. Everyone's had different problems with these machines. I go to my parts vendor, I see a guy with a PM maintenance kit for this thing. I always tell him the horror stories. I see him again a couple weeks later, he finds out that he's had the same problems. Now you won't be able to see this in here, but fusers contain a series of pressure rollers. This one's a paper roller, and then there's a brown one underneath. That's just a regular rubber roller. Now let me go show you. I'm staring at the other one right now. I'm going to show you how you can tell it's worn, and then that's when you know to call your service technician to come out and change. Okay, now we're looking at another fuser. This is for wider paper, but see these orange lines right here? These are consistent with 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper going through it all these years. Now this is a paper roller right here. You can even see the burn marks up inside of here. See? The round edge of my finger's getting dirty. This is from neglected maintenance. This thing's never had a maintenance kit in it. This one doesn't have a tension gear on it. The newer ones, see? Look how disgusting it is. The newer fusers don't have this style of a gear system on it anymore for some reason. This is the tension or pressure plate. Keeps pressure on on this roller, and there's an orange roller underneath here that's heat resistant, so it doesn't melt. And there's pretty much through this tube, there's like a long incandescent light bulb like that. It's not fluorescent, it's incandescent, or whatever the old style light bulbs are. It just pretty much makes heat, and it gets really hot, and it just melts the toner to the paper. Now there are thermistors and a lot of resistors on here. If it gets way too hot, it'll shut off. Then you'll get a fuser error. That means if the fuser overheats, means you gotta change the fuser right away. And if you're wondering why these are always loose, they make them loose so you don't shove them in wrong and break them. They'll move around to fit where you're supposed to put them in. This is off the other one, another one I worked on today. That they broke. The customer broke the main drive gear system on it. See, you can see the pressure plate. The springs are compressed all the way down because that screw and that screw are holding it all in. The second you pop these two screws off, boing, goes the top pressure plate. Now I used to rebuild these, but I found my parts vendor actually does that for me, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't get the same fuser rebuilt twice or many times. I just, sometimes I'll get it rebuilt if it's a low volume printer, but if it's a high volume, I always get brand new fusers. I don't want to use old parts. When they rebuild them, they normally don't change the connectors for the light bulb that goes through here, and the gears aren't normally changed. You have to tell them to change them. See, these connectors are never changed. See, pressure's undivided here, but normally a spring should be changed too, because if you don't change the spring, the plate will start to come up because the springs do get worn out. There'll be play in here. So, and then they're supposed to change the gears, but they never do. They're supposed to change the connector because sometimes the connector gets all, this right here chips away and stuff like that. Later I'll show you a fuser apart. And I'll show you how they work in a way. But this is a fuser that I'll be able to keep. And plus, they never lubricate these things. That's the only lubricant they get that comes from the factory. I put Marvel's mystery oil on these things, and I've had no problems with them. Because the gear lube they use just gets dry and chunky, and it doesn't work right. So that's pretty much how these work. But later I'll show you when I take this one apart, I'll show you how fusers work, and I'll show you pretty much the basic components. Now back to this pig. Oh, just a second, forgot the flashlight. Very important. I can also show you how to run that thing. If you work at an engineering place, I can show you how to operate it and show you common problems, how to fix operator problems, and when to tell that these things need service. Back to this dumb thing. Get another good look at the power supply. That's that plate I showed you where the paper passes. There's the swing gear that I never like to change. And this is the power supply. There's the 110 volts coming in. The fuser is on its own circuit. Now here's how you can tell if you have a bad fuser. Well, you have a bad couple things. If you have two of these printers in your office and you get a fuser error, I think it's a 50 point something or 51, you get a fuser error. Take this fuser out, put it in another machine, and try it. If the fuser fires up and you can print, that means you either have a bad power supply or a bad DC controller board. Either way, you need to call a service technician. Now, if you get a fuser error and put this in another printer and it does the same thing, but the other fuser, let's say you put a new fuser in here and it works, or a used one, and you know that this one didn't work, and the new one works, well, you know it's time to call your service tech or you can buy one yourself. Again, I recommend having a service tech change all this stuff, because service techs like me go through and clean the printer as we're changing this stuff out and point out problems before they occur. But if you put this fuser in another printer and it works, but it didn't work in here, that means either of these two parts are bad. I wouldn't recommend trying to take this apart yourself. You could get shocked and probably possibility of death to occur because these things carry so many volts, it's dangerous. Another problem is if you have a duplexing unit and it doesn't sit in here right, this plug right here, your duplexer could be loose going in here. You could have a duplexer error. And again with the fuser error, if your fuser's not in all the way, like I showed you on the other one, these plugs are loose. Either if you push it in all the way and it doesn't give contact, check your fuser contacts right here. Just clean them with a Q-tip without any fluids. Just put them in there and get all the dirt out of there. Unplug your printer and clean the ones in there with a Q-tip. Put it back together, and if it still doesn't work, call your service technician. There could be something wrong with the power supply or the DC controller board. Now, if your printer is giving you funky displays, such as when you turn or giving you funky messages, like when it starts up, it stays in the HP sequence, like the HP logo goes bring, bring. It does that continuously. It doesn't go to initializing, then you have a bad DC controller board. If your screen doesn't light up, but all the other components seem to work, then you have a bad formatter board. The formatter board is just the brain that sends. This is pretty much the input for all the processing. Your USB or your network, which when the job gets received, let's say you want to print an email or something, well, that takes a lot of work for this thing. It brings it in here, processes the data, or processes it, sends it to the DC controller board, and tells all the other components what to do. Even tells the laser right underneath this thing. We open this up, you see the toner cartridge, but right behind this crack, here's a laser right underneath. If it's not even printing at all, or you have now if you do get prints with half of it black, you either have a laser problem or a toner cartridge problem. If you're using aftermarket cartridges, that means you have a cartridge problem normally, but you call a service technician, come out, and they'll take a look. And here's another problem. If people have the stacker on this thing, if on another model, if this is engaged, it makes a weird grinding noise. But if this is stuck engaged all the time and you're getting paper jams, and this button seems to be stuck down, and let's say the cover's back on, and paper jam stuck in the back. Well, you see it trying to push this up. Well, that means this is stuck down, and I would call a service technician because you have to have them either change this or lubricate the spring underneath here just to keep it from sticking. Because if it sticks like that, it stays like that, that means someone was back here messing with it. Try to keep people out of your printer if you want to make it last longer. This is something new also. Down here there's a little spring. Well, you see that little hole? Oh, this one has that problem too. The spring is supposed to be level with that hole. In a minute I'll make it level and show you what it's supposed to. There, it's lined up with that hole. That spring keeps the fuser up to a point at a certain height where it drives, or it can get driven by that gear and that gear, right? When you hear your printer grinding, it's either that gear driving, which is most of the time, or that gear, which is somewhat of the time too. It's only this when the fuser's coming out, like slipping away this way. That gear is when it's coming down. So pretty much when your fuser is not in all the way and your blue clips are bad, this gear will start to grind. If this is bad, that'll start to grind. Which this is your exit assembly right here. This controls your paper coming out. The fuser drives this. That drives the fuser, and this drives the output. If you're getting jams on the output, that means this could be sitting too low, and your fuser could not be driving this correctly. So make sure that when you're changing your PM kits by yourself without a service tech, that this is level. If it's not level, call your service tech. There could be other problems with this machine too, because either this gear could be bad or that gear could be bad. So call a service tech either way. Don't just fix it and say, screw it. That means something else happened. Like this gear was changed once before because of this. I'm going to now check these two gears in a minute to see if there's something wrong with them. Okay, I just checked those gears. They're looking fine.
I guess nothing really happened over there, but luckily I caught it because the customer wouldn't have. So now we're going to insert the fuser back in here. See, it doesn't even move anymore. It used to wiggle. I don't know if you can see it, but in there's the gear that hooks up, and then this gear pull the fuser out. So here's that gear in there. That drives the exit. This gear drives the stacker. This gear can make noises too. So make sure it's not engaged. Make sure it's always disengaged because it will make noises if it's engaged. Because it'll try to spin something that's not there. Now remember, boys and girls, on any HP printer, pretty much like this one, let me spin the stupid thing around to give you a good idea. I wish I could simulate the problem, but this isn't my printer. If you turn the switch on, and this doesn't show up at all, but you hear all the fans turning, but all the motors won't turn, but the fans will turn on because that's part of the power supply, and this doesn't come on, you have a formatter problem, which it's like the motherboard of a printer. That doesn't work. Now if you turn this on, and the screen comes up, and it stays in the initializer or the HP logo sequence, and these lights keep doing this, that means you have a bad DC controller board. The formatter is sending the signal over there, but it's not getting a response because the DC controller could be shorted out. A lot of these problems do occur is because customers don't call us often enough to have these repaired. They always wait till major repairs are needed, and they always complain why the repairs are so much. Well, if you want to prevent high maintenance costs, call your service tech more often. They'll come out and do some cleaning for you. If we are your service tech, then call us more often. We'll definitely come out. If you recognize that name, then you know who we are. If you recognize the printer, well, you should be ashamed of yourself. This printer was so dirty, it took me a while to clean it. But other than that, that's how you repair. That's how you pretty much you can tell if one of these things needs service, and you can pretty much do some of the cleaning yourself. If you have an air compressor, if you have an IT department, have them take this to an air compressor or something and clean it. Don't have them do the repairs because IT guys aren't trained for that. But have your service tech come out and make sure these things are, not tight, just finger tight so they won't come out. Because if you can take these screws off just by doing this, your formatter may have problems. And when you plug this into your network, do not have a dynamic IP. It needs to be static. If you have an automatic IP, every time you turn this thing off, the printer loses its IP address and something else takes it. And when you fire back on the next day, you try to print, you're printing to something else. For instance, one of those. That's not good. Always set your printer to static IP. It's not that hard to do. You can read your owner's manual or call your service tech. They can configure this to whatever IP your IT department gives them. Same thing with one of those. If you have one of those and you want to set the static, well, we're probably one of the only ones that know how to work on these things correctly. You just give us a call and we'll come out and set this thing to whatever IP your IT department gives us. These things are really easy to maintain as long as you get them, or these things are pretty much cost effective. They don't require as much maintenance. We haven't serviced this thing in a long time. This thing just sits here and we just do blowbacks for customers. We print those. And this thing just sits here, and whenever we want to use it, it fires right up for us. I love it. The only thing I've done to is rebuilt the developer a couple times. We have a static problem in our building, and the humidity gets bad in here too. So every once in a while, I always go through the developer and clean it, and it's not a problem. Went a little overboard with that other one, but if you want, I can make a video on that one. It's not that hard to maintain. But there you go. That's all you need to know about these, junk hunks of crap. They're okay. If you buy them at Staples, it's a throwaway printer. But these are meant for small like home offices or small offices only that don't use them often, and they just they're mainly just for printing invoices or pack slips or something like that for UPS. But not what this customer is doing it for. This customer is using it to print thousands and thousands of these called new file targets. So I wouldn't recommend it. This thing lasts up to 300,000 pages. Dude, a small business like a home office, this will last the entire lifetime of your home business. For crying out loud. This thing has 600,000. Let me read it off to you. You can see it. 679,104 pages. Oh, it's not half a page anymore. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the total count. Where's the total count? Here we go. 679,097 pages and a half. Yeah. That's a half, I believe. I don't know what... I think if you see half, it means your printer jammed. I'm not sure. I never seen half before. But there you go. Do not buy this model, HP LaserJet P4014, or the 4015. If you're having high volume print jobs, do not buy these. Now, to tell all your HP printers are the same. N stands for network, D stands for duplex, tower is T, which means there's a third tray on here. Like that one over there. Both of those printers have separate different trays. The one on the left only has 2, and the bottom's a cabinet. And this one, I love these. This was converted from an N to a DTN. Has the 3 trays. The bottom one's a 4 ream tray, 2,000 pages. The top two, the first one's 8.5 by 14. The bottom one's 11 by 17. So this was reconfigured by me for what we do here. It's rare that I got tray 4 to work, shockingly enough. I can make a video on these too if you have these. And those are more... I get these a lot more often now. So, whichever one you want me to do, I'll do it. They're not that hard. They're both easy. And later I'll show you how to... Probably in the next week or so when I'm not busy. I will take apart this fuser and show you the basics of fusing. Or the basics of your printer fuser for dummies. Just pretty much tell you how it works. I'm not an expert. I just know how they work. If you want me to come out and work on your printers for you, I'm going to put a link to our website at the bottom of this video, and you'll be able to call us and request us for service. Since you pretty much know about this printer, and I'll make some videos about the printers I recommend for purchase, and I'll walk you through how to change a maintenance kit on it. They're not that hard. But and there's some things I'll show you that I recommend calling for a service tech on, but they're not that hard. Cheers.